80s and 90s. And is this buried truth, much like the Holocaust, now coming out? The reality is being presented to people, and that is making people like Nadav Lapid, the Israeli filmmaker in question, uncomfortable. But before we get into all of that, first, the story of how the IFFI guest jury member made a mockery of not just his host, but also of a movie that is this year's biggest raking commercial success in the Hindi film industry.
All of us disturbed and shocked by the movie Kashmir Files that felt to us like a propaganda vulgar movie, inappropriate for an artistic competitive section of such a prestigious film festival.
That's Israeli filmmaker and international jury head of the International Film Festival of India, Nadav Lapid. Sharing the jury report during the closing ceremony of the festival in Goa, it's Lapid's remarks on the 15th film that was showcased, the Kashmir Files, that have caused a political and diplomatic storm.
I feel totally comfortable to share openly these feelings here with you on stage, since the spirit that we felt in the festival can surely accept also a critical discussion, which is essential for art and for life.
The IFFI jury board issued a statement saying that whatever Lapid has said about the movie is his personal opinion. Anupam Kher said that it's Lapid's remarks which are vulgar and not the film.
कश्मीर का सच उन्हें पच नहीं रहा है और वो चाहते हैं कि उसे किसी अच्छे रंगीन खुशनुमा चश्मे से देखा और दिखाया जाए। उसे अगर आप देख नहीं पाते तो आंखें मींच लीजिए, मुंह सी लीजिए, उसका मजाक उड़ाना बंद कीजिए।
Kashmir Files director Vivek Agnihotri now has challenged Nadav Lapid to prove his story wrong.
जो पूरी तरह से एक हिंदू लैंड हुआ करता था, आज वहां हिंदू नहीं रहते हैं। उस लैंड में आज भी आपकी आंखों के सामने चुन चुन के हिंदुओं को मारा जाता है। कश्मीर फाइल्स का एक शॉट, एक डायलॉग, इवेंट कोई अगर प्रूव कर दे कि ये पूरी तरह से सत्य नहीं है, तो मैं फिल्में बनाना छोड़ दूंगा।
Israel's consul general to the Midwest met Kher and apologized to him on behalf of Nadav Lapid.
The first person to call, and I did right away in the morning, to call Anupam Kher, my friend, and just to apologize. Speech that was a private opinion, but nothing to do with the state of Israel, officially and unofficially. I want to say it's not a propaganda.
One private person with his own opinion shouldn't change anything here, that the relations are much stronger than this individual, another individual.
But opposition parties wasted no time in targeting the BJP, which had heavily endorsed the movie.
जिस तरह से प्रोपेगेंडा हुआ था एक पार्टी का और एक पार्टी के खिलाफ, उसके लिए फिल्म बनाई थी और एक पूरी पार्टी, पूरी सरकार, जहां जहां बीजेपी की सरकार है, वो उस प्रचार में लगा दी।
Prime Minister Modi said that the film had rattled the entire ecosystem that claims to be the torchbearer of freedom of expression but does not want the truth to be told. So was Nadav Lapid voicing dissent or denying the truth about Kashmiri Pandits?
All right, full panel joining us this evening on Brass Tacks. Sanjay Jha is former Congress leader and political analyst. Mayank Shekhar, film critic. Dushyant Sridhar is a Vedic speaker and writer. SP Vaid is the former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir, and Sushil Pandit, Kashmiri activist, joining us. Sanjay Jha, let me start with you first. You know, it's all right for somebody to have a dissenting opinion or an opinion that is different from the mainstream. Nadav Lapid could have said this is a badly made film, the technical parts of the film are bad, the actors are bad, the plot is bad. But by saying vulgar propaganda, he is actually questioning the very essence of this movie. He's questioning the truth behind this movie. And in a sense, as somebody asked on Twitter today, will he deny the Holocaust? If he doesn't deny the Holocaust, then why should he deny the Kashmiri Hindu genocide?
You know, Zaka, I do believe that we are not yet a fascist country doing thought policing. But, you know, let me just put the facts on the table based on what I have read. Number one, at no point has he actually tried to conflate what really happened during the time of the horrific Kashmir exodus in Jammu and Kashmir with the film. I mean, this is a comment where he's spoken on behalf of a jury, not just his own opinion, which included of a French director, an American director, and including, I think, Mr. Sudipto Sen. So he was representing a view, majority view. In fact, the overwhelming view of an entire jury. And I believe,
No, the jury has
Zaka,
put out a statement disassociating themselves from his view.
Well, Zaka, you and I both know how that can transpire. I don't want to even get into that. But the simple story here is this, that now let me borrow Narendra Modi's language here. The Prime Minister talked about rattled ecosystem. I don't know what he meant by that. Urban naxals, just how Vivek Agnihotri actually calls people who are supposedly liberal, which is what the private labeling, which has now become a public spectacle for all of us to hear and know. But the truth is, why is the right-wing ecosystem looking so rattled today? It is a view on the artistic standards that the jury felt. At no point has Mr. Lapid tried to say that the Kashmir exodus did not happen.
Okay, so let me ask Sushil Pandit, are we conflating two different issues, Sushil Pandit? At no point did this filmmaker say that he doesn't believe what happened to the Kashmiri Pandits is wrong, or that such a thing never happened at all. All he's saying is that this is a badly made film. That's Sanjay Jha's view.
And by the way,
it's all there, irrespective of what the apologists would like to interpret it as. It is very clearly denouncing the film as propaganda. And that has been from day one the criticism of all those who didn't like this film. Propaganda means it is lie. It is not true. And I would like anyone who calls it a propaganda or a lie to point out just one fact or incident or scene that they would call a lie, a fabrication. Just one. Till date, even the producer director has thrown this challenge. It's been almost a year. Nobody has pointed out even one lie, one fabrication in that film. So that is the testimony to the fact that how rattled or otherwise the opponents of this film are. And all they have is invective, abuse, accusations, allegations, but no substance.
Sushil Pandit, no, one second. Sushil Pandit, there was, even at the time that the movie released, there was criticism that it is whitewashing many of the incidents. It has painted one community as the villain, so on and so forth. And as you very well know, the truth is far more complex than that. The question I am asking you is what Sanjay is also saying, that people have gotten rattled today by what Nadav Lapid said, because they are thinking that he is like denying the Holocaust. He's denying the Kashmiri Hindu genocide and not just criticizing a film. Criticizing a film, all of us can do. I mean, you watch a film, you don't like it, you're free to say what you feel. I watch a film, I don't like it, I'm free what to say. But did Nadav Lapid actually say or construe or conflate that such a genocide never happened at all, it was all just propaganda?
Yeah, it was not the critique of the film, its cinematic standards, its story or its craft or its direction or its music or whatever else goes into making of a film. This was very clearly wholesale rubbishing of it. The essence of it, which was essentially to communicate what happened to us Kashmiri Hindus in Kashmir 32 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, be that as it may, the point here is very clear. Mr. Lapid is parroting that one word propaganda which was handed over to him, which the jury disassociated from very clearly. And as the tradition goes, head of the jury never singles out a film for any kind of praise or criticism in his concluding remarks.
Okay. No, what is more curious, I want to ask Mayank Shekhar this. We had Sudipto Sen. Sushil, give me 30 seconds. We had Sudipto Sen, also one of the jury members. He clearly disagreed with whatever was said by Mr. Lapid, and he said that was not the view of the jury. But that is secondary. Primarily, I'm given to understand there are about 15 to 20 movies that were screened to the jury, and the jury members watched them once, twice. There were 4 movies in all that were given awards. Usually, the jury members talk about the movies that were so good that were given the award, or movies that were so good but they just couldn't make the final cut because, there are only so many number of awards. Nowhere have I heard a jury chief come out and talk about one of the 15 or one of the 20 movies that was badly made according to him. I mean, what was the need for even saying that?
Well, I think more than the need, I'm wondering why should people be appalled by it? I mean, you appointed him as the head of a jury. What else is he supposed to do but not pass judgment on stuff that he watched? And here he's standing before an audience and talking about how appalled he was or how vulgar he found a particular film. It's actually a criticism of a selection committee because he's saying at an international, competition section of one of the top film festivals of the world, this film does not belong. Now, what is he saying? Who is he saying to? He's saying to the people who would have put that film there, which would be a selection committee of that film festival. Why is anybody else getting worked up over this? I'm unable to understand. Yes.
No, I'll tell you why people are getting worked up, Mayank, because of the choice of words. Had he said, this movie doesn't depict the craft of cinema well, or the acting is bad, the plot lines are bad, all of that would have been valid criticism. Like you said, it's all subjective. When he says propaganda, it means it is conflating the truth of what happened with something that is a distorted view of what happened, which is being presented on screen. That's the problem. The choice of the word vulgar propaganda is what has put off a lot of people, including the likes of Sushil Pandit.
So, Zaka, here's the thing, right? I think one needs to be very clear on this, and a co-panelist here made that point about propaganda being a lie. Actually, propaganda does not mean lie. It means one-sided view or selective truth, okay? And it's also debatable. You can debate whether something is propaganda or not, and you can certainly, people have debated this about the Kashmir Files also, and which is precisely the point that he's making. If he finds it vulgar, I mean, we bring him down as the chairman of a jury. Clearly, we should respect his opinion. We must have thought of him as a good enough filmmaker to watch these films and choose the best. If he also makes a point about one of the films that he was appalled by, I think it's perfectly okay. The Israeli ambassador making the point about how you are in India and you shouldn't. This is like it's etiquette-wise, it's not a good thing. Hospitality, I get that bit, but I'm here. I mean, here is a man who is in a government film festival and making a point about a private film, privately funded film. Is this a government movie? Why can't he talk about it? Right? It would be weird if it was like a government film and you're in a government film festival and you're talking about it. To the best of my knowledge,
all right. Let me bring in SP Ved and then Dushyant Sridhar after that.
Private profits from it.
SP Ved, the issue, I think what's happened is, and perhaps this is one of the reasons why Kashmir Files was such a success when no one quite expected it to. It was a time when Bollywood itself was going through a bit of a crisis because no movie was working, is because when people saw it, and obviously, this generation, the Gen Z that's gone and watched this movie, have no recollection or have no memory or history of what happened to the Kashmiri Pandits. The fact that this reality was airbrushed or hidden or not brought out to the real extent of what happened back in 89 and 90, that is what shocked a lot of people, and that's why this movie went on to become the success that it was. Has that been the problem? The fact that that airbrushing of the history that happened to Kashmiri Pandits has been taken away by movies like Kashmir Files, and that some people are finding uncomfortable to deal with?
Zaka, the present generation, today's generation actually didn't much know about what happened in 89 and 90. In fact, I was a young police officer there in the valley when all this was happening. And in fact, Vivek has done this movie after, I think, thousands of interviews with the victims, those who had actually suffered at the hands of terrorists and who were the sufferers of genocide, Kashmiri Pandit genocide. And I think a lot of research had gone into it. And no one can deny that genocide of Kashmiri Pandits had happened. The rapes had happened, murders had happened. If you recall, a terrorist like Bita Karate himself depicting how he killed 25 of them.
Yeah.
So the facts on ground were there, but the present generation didn't know how all this happened. And this picture actually brought is showed in a movie the way all these few incidents. After all, no movie can show everything. It
Correct.
could show only few major aspects of how terrorists went after Kashmiri Pandits just because of their religion. No one can deny that a lot of Kashmiri Muslims were targeted. Whoever stood for India were also targeted. But here, this movie was about Kashmiri Pandits who, for their religion, were targeted, and that is what the way it was done at the behest of Pakistan ISI by the terrorists, their stooges in Kashmir Valley, had actually shocked the country, the present generation, because they didn't have that kind of YouTube, internet, media facility in 89 and 90. And today, when they saw this, they were
it was an eye-opener in that sense. Dushyant, Sridhar, you look at some of the greatest movies that have been made around the Holocaust, whether it is Schindler's List or Sophie's Choice, A Beautiful Mind, The Pianist. These are all, again, subjective truths through the eyes of the filmmaker about something that happened, a defining moment in history. Will this Israeli filmmaker deny the truth behind these subjective interpretations? These are all great movies. You may think The Pianist is a bad movie. I may think it's a great movie. We can have our differences of opinion, but you cannot deny the fact that the Holocaust happened, that 10 million Jews died at the hands of Hitler. So the point I'm making is that it can't be that, denying the Holocaust is not kosher, but denying that Kashmiri Pandits were massacred in 89 and 90, that's okay.
Namaskaram, Zakar. Namaskaram to all my fellow panelists. I'm no Kashmiri Pandit, and I'm sure you're also not a Kashmiri Pandit. But one thing, Zakar, while I grew up in Bangalore, I still remember in 1995, I was in class 3 or 5. The tears that rolled down the cheeks of my Hindi teacher, because she was a Kashmiri woman. And in class 3 or 5, students, we were rattled when the teacher cries. Then later, probably on inquiry, we got to know that she was a Kashmiri Pandit, and her house and her vehicle was burned, and they had to empty the entire place. So it's not as if the South was insulated from all the happenings in the North. So today, when the filmmaker, probably the video was circulated that the person called it a propaganda and called it vulgar, that did not hurt me much. But when I saw of my fellow Indians in the Twitter and other social media applauding him, I feel that the Kashmiri Pandits died today. Because this was, see, you can question about, as a filmmaker myself, I can tell you, you can question a filmmaker's way of making the film, the artistic abilities that he has used and what is depicted in the movie. But you cannot call it a propaganda, especially on the Kashmiri Pandits, because that is the truth. This has been recorded. This has been, even the person who was a perpetrator, he has spoken out and said that he has killed so many people. And finally, when my fellow Indians say that, yes, what that person said was right, then I feel Kashmiri Pandits died another death today.
Let me go back to Sanjay Jha. I mean, somebody mentioned this incident during the shooting of Schindler's List. They were so upset by the fact that somebody decided to make a movie about all the atrocities that happened to the Polish immigrants, the refugees, the people who ran away from these gas chambers, from these camps, that while the movie was being shot, Sanjay, people started, victims, second and third generation survivors of families of the Holocaust, they came and started painting the Nazi symbol. They started disrupting the shooting of the film. But the filmmaker still went ahead. And then, of course, the world judges Schindler's List for the great movie that it is. The point is, the truth of this kind of genocide, mass massacres, are always hard to digest. And in this case, in the case of Kashmiri Pandits, I keep going back to this, that for 30 years, this current generation was not told the truth, or at least the extent of truth of what happened to Sushil Pandit's family or other Kashmiri Pandits' families back in 89 and 90. And it's that truth, the airbrushing of the truth, that people are saying no to now.
Well, Zaka, let me reiterate 2 points here. Number one, the spectacular box office success of the film has got nothing to do with the way a jury of very talented filmmakers see it in terms of either creative excellence or some outstanding artistic merit. Schindler's List, I mean, it'll be a little unfair to Steven Spielberg to draw him in a conversation with my good friend Vivek. I think let's try and not mix the two. The critical point here is that I think where this has become political, and it is a political conversation. I don't know why people believe it is not. It is political because the BJP made it political. You know, I want to bite the bullet here. There's no need to pussyfoot around here. Narendra Modi marketed the film. He, in fact, I thought was very belligerent when he said a certain ecosystem is rattled. What did he mean by that? I mean, for God's sake, no matter which political party, which political dispensation, everybody knows what happened in Kashmir was wrong. And I think for him, you know, to play politics on that is exactly the consequence of what we are seeing here on your panel right now. And the simple truth is this.
But can I ask one question? I'll ask Sushil also on a follow-up on this. Kashmir Files is certainly not the first movie that was made about the Kashmir genocide of Kashmiri Pandits and Hindus there, right? No, wait, one second. The reason why everyone started talking about this film was because, you know, it turned out to be successful. And correct me if I'm wrong, if my memory serves me right, it was after the first 2 or 3 weeks after this movie was talked about, people were going back to the theaters after COVID and so on, and suddenly, you know, people sat up and said, oh, this is a great movie. It's after the success of this movie that the politicians, including the Prime Minister, came in and said that an ecosystem is being rattled or whatever he said. So Sushil, I mean, if every movie that was made about Kashmiri Pandits was as successful as Kashmir Files, then all politicians would latch onto it, right? But that's not the case.
You got the timeline right. This was a post facto, you know, fitting off some kind of an allegation to prove a point, which is, of course, falling flat because the timeline you quoted is absolutely right. The movie had run its course for several weeks, after which Prime Minister was met and he said whatever he said. The point, there are two issues that I would like to bring in here. Please allow me, it's about 30 seconds. One, you mentioned Schindler's List, Pianist. You also mentioned Life is Beautiful. I heard one of your panelists say, what about the other side? Did anyone ask what happened to the German soldiers in those 3 films? How their families were devastated? What about the other side? Why do we ask this other side question here? Why are we trying to monkey balance? Number 2, whatever this head of the jury has said, I think he draws sustenance from the fact that my own state, my own governments, government after government, prime minister after prime minister, party after party, coalition after coalition, has still not recognized, acknowledged the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus, has not delivered justice, has been pussyfooting on hanging the criminals who are self-confessed, run on a murder spree, committed massacres. Not a dime of compensation. We still incidentally have refugee camps with thousands of refugees 32 years after their exodus. It is because we have abandoned this issue and abandoned the victims and survivors that people like Lapid get the temerity to question it and to call it a propaganda. So the day we nail it within our system here, the world will not.
So let me ask Ved Saab. I mean, we've had these conversations in the last 1 year also. There have been, even today, 30 years later, and Sushil Pandit is right. You know, Kashmiri Pandits who were rehabilitated, who were brought back to the valley, some of them working as school teachers, government employees, clerks, etc., working in banks. You know, there are n number of case studies of people who've been shot, who've been singled out and shot. So, irrespective of which political party is in power or which government is in power, is this their fate, that they will be used as cannon fodder until, you know, we realize and we decide to put an end to this problem once and for all?
Zaka, I am not into this political debate, but let me tell you, if anybody has doubt about murders, rapes, tortures, and genocide of Kashmiri Pandits, just dig the police file, the investigation files of their murders. their torture, their rapes, and the multiple FIRs which have been lodged. Look at the lakhs of Kashmiri Pandits living in different camps even today after more than 32 years, whether it is Jammu or Delhi or many other parts of the country. I think it's the first time in the world it has happened that countrymen are refugees in their own country. What a tragedy. And no one can deny this. All this is, I think, for anyone to go and see in those records. Just coming to the point you said, why criticism? See, because success only brings criticism. When the movie got hit and it actually hit the conscience of the country, then only everyone started latching on to taking credit and criticizing it. So success brings criticism.
All right, I'll give Mayank Shekhar the final word. Even in the film industry, generally what you would have normally expected is when a film, and a film that's done reasonably well. I'm told it's the highest grossing Hindi film of this year, or in the top 3. Usually what you see is other filmmakers, even if they don't agree with Vivek Agnihotri or his depiction or his truth, or you can call it exaggerated truth, whatever you want to, even if they don't agree with him, they will necessarily come forth. Imagine if this director had said the same thing about a Shyam Benegal film or a Ray film or I don't know, any of or an Adur Gopalakrishnan film. There would have been outrage across the industry. Today we're not seeing that. We're seeing, isolated voices here and there, and that's about it.
Shaka, I think you compared Kashmir Files already to, Spielberg's Schindler's List, and now it's Shyam Benegal and Adur Gopalakrishnan we're talking about. Let's be fair. Anybody who's, even seen one movie in his life would not ideally put both the films in the same pedestal, Schindler's List and Kashmir Files. And I'm just being as objective as one can be, right? The filmmakers who made Kashmir Files, when it's their child, and I can totally understand where they're coming from. It's, that's how close you are to your work. But the others, I'm pretty sure if one movie, so there is that element that needs to be made clear. From the perspective of the film industry, I think right now we are only talking about this because there's an Israeli filmmaker who made this point. And we've made all these things, all these arguments about Kashmir Pandits, which is a political issue that needs to be solved politically and needs to be solved by the government more than a movie, right? What we have not been able to establish, what is this particular person's personal agenda to say what he did? I think the only agenda he's likely to have is movies. And he saw film that he felt, he was appalled by. What could he possibly have against Kashmiri Pandits as a cause? He just made a point about artistic merit of a film that he believes did not deserve to be in the international.
No, one second. There are two issues with that. No, one second. No other member of the jury has made that point. In fact, the jury has put out a statement saying that they don't agree with what he has said. Right?
Why can't he have
one second, correct me if I'm wrong. If there are 4, 5, I don't know how many members there are in the jury, and one of them feels this and the rest of them feel something else, A, that's not the opinion of the jury, and B, I keep coming back to this point. I mean, if you wanted to make a point to the selection committee, you make it to the selection committee. You don't go up on the closing ceremony and single out this one movie and call it what he said, vulgar propaganda. This movie was not even awarded. It was not even in the top 4 or 5 that were given awards. Why are you singling this movie out when there was no ostensible reason to do so? And none of the other members of the jury who were with you agreed with you on that.
Well, he singled a particular film out in public because he felt like doing it as the chairperson of jury. Why should anybody else have a problem with it? And what agenda are we really ascribing to this gentleman? I'm
Sushil.
We have a virtue signaling
and that's really what happened. What is the problem?
No, okay, one second. Let him respond. No, Sushil, in as much as one of the points that not Mayank but other guests have been making is, why do you need an Israeli or an American or a British filmmaker for validation of a film that you've put? You've put out a film there. People have loved it. They've lapped it up. Why should? And I'm being very crude here. Why should a white man validate your movie.
No, certainly not. I'm not looking for a validation from him. But he uses the platform offered by my state, my government, my institution to go out of his way, depart from a script, read out a pre-prepared script when there was no need for it. He's obviously working in concert with others who have fed him this. He has never been to Kashmir. He doesn't know Kashmir from anywhere. And when he does it on purpose, it points to a larger network of opinions making their way into the pedestal, the formal institution where he's speaking from as head of the jury.
All right,
I've
got to leave it at that.
It is disconcerting.
I'm completely out of time. Thank you very much, Sanjay Jha, Sushil Pandit, Mayank Shekhar, SP Vaid Saab, and of course Dushyant Sridhar for joining us. We'll see whether this is the end of this controversy or whether there will be more. In fact, after he made the speech that he made at the closing ceremony, this was Sunday night, Monday night, then he went on some Israeli channels and then went on to elaborate about this. So let's see if this is the end of it or whether he will continue to make this point. But in the meanwhile, let's move on to another story. It's going to be in 48 hours. Gujarat will be voting for the first phase of elections. Ahead of that, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge has compared Prime Minister Modi to Ravan, the evil king. Kharge was being critical of votes being sought in the name of the Prime Minister in every election instead of local candidates or the performance of the local government. The BJP latched on to the issue and accused the Congress of insulting all Gujaratis, once again reminding the Congress of the Maut Ka Saudagar comment, which cost the party the 2007 election.
देख कर ओढ़ दो। अब भाई तुम्हारे को तुम्हारी सूरत कितनी बार देखना, कारपोरेशन में भी तुम्हारी सूरत देखना, एमएलए इलेक्शन भी तुम्हारी सूरत देखना, एमपी इलेक्शन में भी तुम्हारी सूरत देखना, हर जगह कितने हैं भाई, क्या आपके रावण के जैसा 100 मुख है?
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को रावण कहा और मुझे लगता है इससे बड़ी धृष्टता इस प्रकार के भाषा का प्रयोग, इस प्रकार का गाली गलौज अपने प्रधानमंत्री के लिए करना और वह भी गुजरात के सपूत के लिए ऐसे शब्दों का प्रयोग गुजरात में खड़े होकर करना, यह उचित नहीं।
All right, let me go across to our two guests joining us on the face-off this evening. R.P. Singh of the BJP, Arshpreet Khadial of the Congress is joining us. Arshpreet, you know, there's a sense of deja vu about Mr. Kharge's comments because we saw what happened in 2007 with the Maut Ka Saudagar comment. We saw what happened in 2017 when Manishankar Iyer called the Prime Minister a neech kisam ke aadmi. The Congress, it seems, hasn't learned from any of these past lessons that making personal attacks on someone like Narendra Modi only backfires.
First of all, kindly allow me an uninterrupted minute. Number one, the Bharatiya Janata Party, before questioning us, before talking about us, should apologize for the statements that they have made in the past, for calling our leaders Dayan, for calling our leaders Saddam, and Mr. Modi himself, when he said to the former Prime Minister and made a raincoat-related remark. So the Bharatiya Janata Party should apologize for those statements first and then should talk about us. And number two, we are simply following the footsteps of the Bharatiya Janata Party, what they are teaching the country. And number two, I do not understand kahan se ye logic lekar ke aate hain ki, you know, all the Gujaratis have been insulted. How? Where do you get this logic from? And what do you eat before giving the statement? I also want to know and understand how you.
No, but Arshpreet, that's what the that's what the Gujaratis said in 2007 in response to Maut Ka Saudagar. That's what the Gujarati electorate said in 2017 in response to Manishankar Iyer calling Mr. Modi a neech kisam ka aadmi. Right? That's what the Gujarati people said.
Zakka, you asked me 10 questions. I'll give you 10
No, I didn't
answers,
ask you 10. I asked you one question, sir.
Zakka, is the second question, first of all. And I asked you for 60 uninterrupted seconds, which you haven't given me. So please give them now. Number two, I love the attitude of the Bharatiya Janata Party, first of all. You know, in this also, they want to encash votes. What do they say? In order to avenge the insult, give us votes so that we can avenge it. Now, this is something that the Bharatiya Janata Party wants to encash votes upon. And number 4, Mr. Modi saying that vote on my face, vote in my name. Has he forgotten the simple fact that India is a parliamentary form of government, not a presidential form of government?
So no, I'll get to that. But let RP Singh respond. RP Singh respond. BJP has also been critical and name called Congress leaders. Jersey cow kaha gaya. Recently, BJP leader called Rahul Gandhi Saddam Hussein. ये भी तो insult है.
Well, thank you, Jaka. I appreciate if Mr. Khadge will hear me patiently. I heard him patiently and never intervened when you were speaking. Sir, Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of the country. He is your Prime Minister, my Prime Minister, Khadge's Prime Minister. He is Prime Minister for everyone. When we compare Prime Minister to Ravana, obviously the people of the country will repel it. Congress might say that, oh, it's very normal. The BJP ex-leader said something, Y leader said something. But as for Saddam Hussein, I remember Mr. Rahul Gandhi also said Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi to Prime Minister Modi at one given time. Neech Aadmi, Gandhi, Nani ka Kira, Hitler, Dawood Ibrahim, Mussolini, Basma Sur. These were all being said about the Prime Minister. But this is not the issue. The issue is, what mindset do you come from? What mindset is protruding you to do say so many things about the Prime Minister? Because you don't have any policy. Your leaders don't have policy. Your leaders can't be seen and projected. Your leader is running away from the state. He has not done a single rally in the state. He knows because he's losing the state. That's why he has put Mr. Khadge to take charge of the campaign, and that too what Mr. Khadge has done. So what he has done. But fact is that they don't neither have face, neither they have any policy. So they keep doing such words, they keep using such words against the Prime Minister. And probably they think by doing so, we can garner some vote.
But RP Singh, also tell me this, the last point that Ashpreet made, which Congress leaders are making again and again, कि हर वोट, even the PM himself said this, हर वोट मोदी के लिए है. Candidate कौन है, उसका कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, हर वोट मोदी के लिए है. But then, what is the point of then having MLA elections, MLC elections, MPs elections, अगर हर वोट मोदी के लिए है तो?
No, Modi is the tallest leader. Modi is the tallest leader, not in India. He is the tallest. He is one of the tallest leaders in the world today. I mean, he is seen in different perspectives in the world today. So, if we have a leader who, because of his policies, is popular, and if people vote for his policies, what is wrong in it? If 5 lakh health insurance is given to people at large in 10 crore families in country, or the Kisan Samman Nidhi goes to farmers in country, more than 10 crore farmers in country, or the more than 3 crore women are given house roof on their head, or more than 10 crore women are given the gas cylinders. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong in it. And then because of that, if Prime Minister is Modi, then what's wrong in it?
Ashpreet, two points. One, like I said, whenever your party seems to have made personal attacks on Mr. Modi, it has always backfired for you. I'm yet to see evidence of when personal attacks are made on your leaders, it backfires on the other party and your party gets votes. That's number one. Secondly, what Mr. RP Singh is saying is right. If PM Modi is directly speaking to the voters and saying, you vote for me, and whatever the benefits are, LPG cylinders or toilets or whatever it is, that's their election strategy. Nobody is stopping Rahul Gandhi from saying, mere naam pe vote do.
Thank you, Zaka, for the question. First, like you allowed uninterrupted time to the BJP spokesperson, I hope the same would be allowed to me as well. Number two, you said that it backfired for the Congress party. Now, I'm very sure that, Zaka, you weren't one of the voters there in the respective states. So I think it's not for you, but for the people to decide.
Sir, in 2007, how many seats you got? In 2017, how many seats you got? मैं थोड़ी बोल रहा हूँ. This is electoral record. History है ये.
Answering a question, Zaka, answering a question. Now, how many seats we got? How does that? How is it proven that number of seats were scored because of this statement or because of any particular reason?
Sir,
it could be
if you won that election, nobody would have asked you this.
Number two.
कोई ये आपको नहीं बोलेंगे कि मौत का सौदागर बोलना नहीं चाहिए था. अगर वो इलेक्शन आप जीत जाते, कांग्रेस पार्टी जीत जाती, तो nobody would have said कि मौत का सौदागर बोलने से आपको इलेक्शन हारना पड़ा. इलेक्शन हारे इसीलिए बोल रहे हैं ना लोग.
Now, really appreciate the third interruption. I really would have hoped that he would have done the same with the BJP spokesperson, also wasn't done. So I hope there won't be a fourth one. Number one. See, Zaka, it is for the people of the respective states to decide. And you cannot tell what was the reason behind a particular loss. There could be n number of reasons. Number two, the Bharatiya Janata Party, do they have a license to call our leaders Diane, to call our leaders Saddam, and many more things that I cannot even speak on a debate. Number four, the PM of the country, I just want to ask him one thing. He says that I'm Gujarat Putra. Why not Bharat Putra if you're the Prime Minister? You're the Prime Minister, you're supposed to be representative of the country, not of a particular state. So understand that. And number two, the son of Gujarat takes cameras along with him when he goes to meet with his mother. I want to ask Mr. R.P. Singh, why? What's the need of taking cameras along? And number three,
how is that relevant to today's debate? Rashpreet, you are going on and on a monologue, completely irrelevant points. But anyway, R.P. Singh, please respond. Why not Bharat Putra? Why not? Why not Gujarat Putra? No. You can absolutely say what you want to say. I've never interrupted you from saying anything. Doesn't mean I have to agree with all the nonsense you say, Ashpreet. If I find your argument stupid, I will call your argument stupid. Sorry, I'm sorry about it. If your arguments are not cogent, if your arguments are not sensible, I will say it out loud on TV.
See, what you're saying is nonsense or not is for the people to decide.
If you don't agree with my views, you can call it stupid. You can say it's stupid. I don't have a problem with it. I don't expect you to agree with. I don't expect you to agree with me. Just like you shouldn't expect me to agree with you.
I won't be here on the
Anyway,
debate.
R.P. Singh, I'll give you the final word. Ultimately, look, I don't think civility in political discourse is something that any of our political parties are particularly well known for. But fact is that, particularly in the case of the Congress party, whenever they've indulged in personal attacks of Mr. Modi, it has electorally backfired on them. Had they not, lost because of that, nobody would have said कि मौत का सौदागर बोलना गलत था या नीच किस्म की आदमी बोलना गलत था. अगर वो इलेक्शन जीत जाते तो कोई नहीं पूछता.
See, they don't understand one thing. Congress party doesn't understand one thing. Modi ji has worked hard and slogged hard to be what Modi ji is today. He has, being the CM of the Gujarat, he has worked very hard for the people of Gujarat, and so has he, after becoming the Prime Minister, worked hard for the country. I have never seen a Prime Minister who has working so hard for the country. I mean, I've been in active politics for the last 45 years, but never seen anyone as hardworking as him and as dedicated as him. So people respect him for his work, for his ideas, for his implementation of those ideas.
All right.
Whether it was Gujarat, whether it's country.
I got to wrap up. We'll see. The phase one campaigning got over today. And on Thursday is when the phase one election will take place in Gujarat. On Monday, the second phase. There'll be a series of political events in the run-up, of course, campaign events in the run-up to that. And we'll have special coverage both on the final day of polling from 6 p.m. We'll have our exit polls. And of course, on the 8th of December from 6 a.m. we'll be having our live counting day coverage. Quick break. When we come back, all the other stories, including a high drama in Hyderabad after Jagan Mohan Reddy's sister and YSRTP founder YS Sharmila is arrested right outside KCR's house.
खुद एक ऐसे समुदाय से आते हैं जिन्होंने कई वर्षों तक यातनाएं सही हैं, जेनोसाइड देखा है, उनके दर्दों पे बनी हुई फिल्म को लेकर टिप्पणी करना शोभा उन्हें नहीं देता है. उनका इस फिल्म को प्रोपेगेंडा कहना अपने आप में एक लेफ्ट लिबरल प्रोपेगेंडा है, क्योंकि एक जूरी हेड का काम फिल्म के इंटेंशन को लेकर नहीं हो सकता, उसका काम सिनेमेटिक क्वालिटी पे ज़रूर हो सकता है.
All right, my colleague Anjali is now very quickly going to bring you more details. The jury on which this Israeli director was a part had a number of other American and French filmmakers. There was also an Indian filmmaker. Anjali is with us right now to share what he had to say.
So the Israeli ambassador to India has bashed Nadav Lapid, who is an Israeli filmmaker who has criticized the movie Kashmir Files. And in his tweet, the ambassador has said, this is an open letter to Nadav Lapid following his criticism of Kashmir Files. It's not in Hebrew because I wanted our Indian brothers and sisters to be able to understand. It is also relatively long, so I'll give you the bottom line first. You should be ashamed. Here's why. And then he has cited a long list of reasons. Now, the Israeli ambassador says, in Indian culture, they say that a guest is like God. You have abused in the worst way the Indian invitation to chair the panel of judges at IFFI, Goa, as well as the trust, respect and warm hospitality they have bestowed on you. Next, the ambassador says, our Indian friends brought Leo Raz and Isaac Shroff from Fauda official in order to celebrate the love in India towards Fauda and Israel. I suspect that this is maybe also one of the reasons they invited you as an Israeli and me as the ambassador of Israel. I understand your need in retrospect to justify your behavior, but I can't understand why you told Ynet News after the minister and I said on stage that there is similarity between our countries because we fight a similar enemy and reside in a bad neighborhood. We did speak about the similarities and closeness between our countries. The minister spoke about his visits to Israel, it being a high-tech nation and the potential of combining this with the film industry. I spoke about the fact that we grew up watching Indian films. I also said that we should be humble when India with such a great film culture is consuming Israeli content, fodder and more. I'm no film expert, but I do know that it's insensitive and presumptuous to speak about historic events before deeply studying them and which are an open wound in India because many of the involved are still around and still paying a price. As a son of Holocaust survivor, I was extremely hurt to see reactions in India to you that are doubting Schindler's List, the Holocaust and worse. I unequivocally condemn such statements and there is no justification and it does show the sensitivity of the Kashmir issue here. So this is how the Israeli ambassador to India has bashed Israeli filmmaker Nadav Lapid, who has criticized the highly acclaimed movie Kashmir Files at the International Film Festival of India, which was held in Goa, and he has tweeted a series of tweets in which he has stated the reasons.
I believe my colleague Pallavi Ghosh is also with us right now and we're going to go over to her on the phone. Pallavi, while the Israeli director was making this speech from the stage, I believe INB Minister Anurag Thakur and actors like Akshay Kumar were also present. Could you tell us more?
That's right. They were very much sitting in the front row and this was a grand IFFI festival. But more importantly, it was also a special edition of what we wanted, a cinematic union between Israel and India. The popular Israeli serial Fauda was also something which is being talked about, where it can be converted into an OTT platform made in Hindi with Hindi actors or Bollywood actors, so to say. Now, all of this is the backdrop, which is why the Israeli ambassador to India is deeply embarrassed, if you go by his series of tweets, because he's worried and apprehensive of the fact that whether it's going to have an impact on the otherwise good equations between India and Israel. That's one. Second, whenever movies are sent to IFFI, they are sent obviously with the nod coming in from the government and also with a certain amount of cinematic acknowledgement. And in that context, if you have a chairperson standing up and says, I'm going to speak on entire behalf of the jury, it hasn't gone down very well. We already see the dissenting voices within the jury already.
Okay, my colleague, how does the selection process in the IFFI actually work? What role do the governments have to play, if any? Could you give us more context here?
Well, it is the International Film Festival of India, which is the official film festival of our country. And a lot of times these film festivals are used to further our cultural ties with other countries. This time around, it was Israel, which was in focus in the spotlight. And we had our INB Minister Anurag Thakur extend that invitation to Israel.
Welcome back. There was high drama in Hyderabad today as YSR Telangana Party founder YS Sharmila squared off with the police.
Sharmila was briefly detained on Monday following a clash between her supporters and workers of the ruling TRS in Warangal. So this morning, she got into the driver's seat of one of the cars damaged in yesterday's clash and tried to go to Pragati Bhavan, the official residence of Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao. But halfway through, the road was blocked by police who tried to prevent her from proceeding to the CM's house. As Sharmila continued sitting in the car with a smashed windshield, several YSRTP members and her supporters surrounded the car to prevent her from being detained. Sharmila refused to step out of the SUV, even locking herself in the vehicle. That's when police summoned a tow truck to the spot. The tow truck lifted the SUV and towed it away, with Sharmila inside.
But this was only the starting point of the showdown between YS Sharmila and the Hyderabad police. This is what ensued after that.
While Sharmila sat in the driver's seat, her SUV was towed away to the SR Nagar police station, where she continued to remain inside the vehicle even as the police tried to convince her to step out. While Sharmila remained adamant, crowds swelled in front of the police station as more and more of her supporters gathered near her car. A locksmith had to be brought in to pry open the door of the SUV. After several tense minutes of the standoff, Sharmila got out of the vehicle and was then taken inside the SR Nagar police station. Sharmila's mother, YS Vijay Lakshmi, was put under house arrest as she tried to leave her house to go meet her daughter. YS Sharmila, who is Andhra Pradesh's Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy's sister, had launched a Padyatra which has covered more than 3,500 kilometers so far. In the course of the march, Sharmila has repeatedly targeted the KCR government, accusing it of being corrupt.
The Delhi police have decided to reward the cops who were in the police van with Aftab when it was attacked Monday. The Delhi Police Commissioner appreciated how the cops handled the situation without opening fire. Two men carrying swords attacked the police van carrying the murder accused in the Shraddha Walkar murder case. This was very close to the FSL office in North Delhi. A Delhi court turned down former Congress MLA Asif Khan's bail plea for assaulting a police officer in Delhi last week. The court observed that the accused does not deserve any leniency at this stage and the likelihood of similar offence being repeated cannot be ruled out. Khan was sent to 14 days judicial custody after being arrested for manhandling a cop in Shaheen Bagh. There were clashes and stone pelting on the streets of Patna today as members of the Parsi community went on a rampage. Here's why.
Dozens of members of the Parsi community tried to march towards Raj Bhavan in protest of what they called fake cases filed against them. But hundreds of police personnel were deployed near the governor's house to prevent the march. That didn't stop the protesters, who decided to break police barricades and continue their march. But when police tried to block the protesters again, they started pelting stones at the cops.
हम माननीय नीतीश कुमार से प्रार्थना करते हैं, हम अपनी सरकार से प्रार्थना करते हैं कि आप हम पार्सी समाज पे अन्याय न करें, अत्याचार न करें.
More than 60 police officers were injured in the stone pelting. Eventually, police had to lathi charge the protesters to try and bring the situation under control.
Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot and his former deputy Sachin Pilot decided to put up a united front at a meeting to discuss the Bharat Jodo Yatra, which will be entering the state on the 4th. Gehlot and Pilot were seen greeting each other, holding hands with Congress General Secretary K.C. Venugopal. This is just days after Gehlot called Pilot a traitor. Meanwhile, a stray bull entered Ashok Gehlot's rally in Mehsana just when he was addressing the crowd. The bull can be seen running around the ground while Gehlot urges the crowd to remain calm. The Rajasthan Chief Minister blamed rival BJP for sending a bull into the crowd at his rally. The 18th edition of the India-US Joint Military Exercise Yuddh Abhyas is currently underway in Auli in Uttarakhand.
Around 350 soldiers from each side are taking part in the drills around 100 kilometers from the line of actual control with China. The exercise, which began earlier this month, comes at a time of heightened tensions between India and China along the LAC. The focus is on exchanging best practices, tactics, techniques and procedures between the two nations' army. The aim is to enhance interoperability and share expertise between the both armies in peacekeeping and disaster relief operations. China has opposed the exercise, calling it an interference in the bilateral boundary issue and a violation of agreement between New Delhi and Beijing that no military drill will be held near the LAC.
The centre cleared the names of 2 advocates for their appointment as Bombay High Court judges following recommendations by the Supreme Court Collegium. Last week, the names of 10 judges recommended for elevation by the Collegium were turned down by the centre. The Apex Court had made its displeasure clear regarding the delay in clearing judicial appointments. Vistara Airlines will be merged with Tata-owned Air India by March of 2024. Singapore Airlines, which owns minority shares in Vistara in its joint venture with the Tatas, will own around 25% of the enlarged Air India. It will also infuse more than 2,000 crores into the new entity. The rearrangement will mean a larger fleet and more routes under the Air India brand after the Tata Group took over the airline. For the 3rd straight day, protests have been raging in China against Xi Jinping's zero-COVID policy.
Military tanks rolled into the streets of China, bringing back horrors of Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. Beijing is cracking down on demonstrators who are protesting against the country's zero-COVID policy. Several police officers were seen wrestling with the protesters before dragging them away. Unprecedented scenes have been witnessed in China since the weekend. Slogans against Xi Jinping have been heard in multiple cities. The demonstrations that began with the rage over harsh zero-COVID policies are now evolving into a movement demanding broader freedoms. People are turning into banned apps like Twitter, Telegram, Instagram through VPN to communicate and organize protests against the Chinese government.